Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's go ahead and get started with Week 52's Word Nerd Wednesday. Now, so far this series, we've looked at two very important elves, Eärenion Gil-galad and his alleged father, Fingon. Not to mention, the High King of Arda itself, Manwe Sulimo. All three of those names came from our Second Age Saturday readings in Aldarion and Arendis from Unfinished Tales. Today, though, we're going to take a look at another elf and another of the Valar, but this time from our Third Age Thursday readings as we go through the poems and songs in The Lord of the Rings. Tomorrow, we're going to read the Elven Hymn to Elbereth that Frodo and his friends hear in the Woody End, sung by elves led by one Gildor Inglorion. And that's where we're going to start, the name of Gildor Inglorion. This one's relatively straightforward. While the meaning of his name isn't given explicitly in the text or even the nomenclature, it's pretty easy to figure out. The first element, Gil, means star or spark, silver glint, twinkle of light, and it is everywhere. Like we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we looked at the name of Eärenion Gil-galad. Osgiliath, citadel of the stars. Thorongil, eagle of the star. The Dagor in Gileath, battle under stars, or Gilthoniel, but now I'm getting ahead of myself. The other element of his name is just as straightforward. Dor is a soft mutation of the suffix tor, and it means king or lord, and we see it in names like Thorondor, king of the eagles, and Meneldor, lord of the heavens. It's cognate with the Quenya tar, as in Anatar, lord of gifts, so Gildor is star-lord or king of stars, something along those lines. Now, the name Inglorion means simply son of Inglor, as the Ion is just the patronymic suffix, like in Eldarion, son of the Eldar, or Aldarion, son of the trees. Now, of course, that brings up the question of his ancestry, but I'm going to talk about that during my Third Age Thursday reading of the Hymn to Elbereth tomorrow. For now, we're going to go to the Valier that Gildor's folk are singing about, the queen beyond the western seas, Elbereth Gilthoniel. And for a deep dive into her name, or names as the case may be, I'm going to go to a source that we don't look at too often. The Road Goes Ever On. It's a book that Tolkien worked on with composer Donald Swann, published in 1967, setting 6 of his poems to music. Now, later editions in 1978 and 2002 would each add an additional poem. But what I want to look at here aren't the poems, but Tolkien's own notes and translations on A Elbereth Gilthoniel. Now, that's the Sindarin version of this same hymn. It's sung in Rivendell, but the word nerdery still applies to her name. Tolkien explains, Elbereth was the usual name in Sindarin of the Vala, called in Quenya Varda, the Exalted. It is more or less the equivalent of Quenya Elentari, Star Queen, but Bereth actually meant spouse and was used of one who is queen as spouse of a king. Then he goes on to tell us about another of her names, or titles, really, Fanuilos. In the song in this chapter, it is rendered Snow White. But Tolkien says this is very inadequate. Fana is an elvish element with primary meaning veil. The Sindarin form Fan was usually applied to clouds, floating as veils over the blue sky, or the sun or moon, or resting on hills. In a footnote, he gives the example of Fanuithal, Cloudy Head, one of the 3 peaks over Moria. But Tolkien still has more for us, saying, in Quenya, however, the simple word Fana acquired a special sense. Owing to the close association of the High Elves with the Valar, it was applied to the veils or raiment in which the Valar presented themselves to physical eyes. These were the bodies in which they were self-incarnated. They usually took the shape of the bodies of elves and men. The Valar assumed these forms when they came and dwelt in Arda. They did so because of their love and desire for the children of God for whom they were to prepare Arda. The future forms of elves and men had been revealed to them, though they had no part in their design or making, and the precise time of their appearance was not known. In these fanar, veils or raiment, they later presented themselves to the elves and appeared as persons of majestic but not gigantic stature, vested in robes expressing their individual natures and functions. The High Elves said that these forms were always in some degree radiant, as if suffused with a light from within. In Quenya, Fana thus came to signify the radiant and majestic figure of one of the great Valar. In Sindarin, especially as used by the High Elves, and remember, by the way, their original tongue was Quenya, but Thingolf forbade its use in his extensive realms in Beleriand, turning Quenya basically into an Elvish Latin. Back to Tolkien's words, the original identical word fan, cloud, was also given the same sense. Fanuilos, thus in full, signified bright angelic figure ever white as snow. So, that's Elbereth, Elentari, and Fanuilos. But what about the name Varda itself? Varda is a Quenya name from a Valoran word meaning sublime, if we look at the War of the Jewels, Appendix D. It's exalted if we look at Tolkien's translation in The Road Goes Ever On, or if we look at Letter 211, it's lofty. But either way, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. We also have Tintale, a name that she received after kindling the new and brighter stars with the dew of Telperion. That name means star kindler, or she that causes sparkling, kindles lights. That becomes Gilthoniel in Sindarin. So we've now covered Varda Elentari, Elbereth Gilthoniel, Tintale, and Fanuilos. In Sauron Defeated, her name appears in Adunaic, the language of the Númenóreans, as Avradi. In the Shibboleth of Feanor, she has a Quenya title, Airatari, or Holy Queen. And in the Lays of Beleriand, she is named Hir Anun, a Sindarin title meaning Lady of the West. And that is it for Varda, though we'll talk about her a bit tomorrow as well on Third Age Thursday. But folks, that is it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Come back next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, please let me know by emailing bartleman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, bonus weekly episode, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Please follow or subscribe in your podcast apps and follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.